you have all the time in the world to clear the way, cut little notches, and put all the stuff in the way they do it on normal controlled demolition. But as you can see from the explosives, I mean the photograph, video evidence, those buildings are blown to smithereens starting at the top, which is definitely not standard for controlled demolition. It's still a form of controlled demolition because they controlled it and it was demolition. Now, just because it doesn't look like the
That's true.
commercial demolitions doesn't mean anything. I mean, it wasn't an open in open air type of thing. It was a covert thing. They had to do everything hidden, and so they used so much more explosives than they ever would have if they had the ability to do it openly. But covertly, about the only place that they could have put those explosives was in the center core, and that doesn't put any energy on the outside of the building. So it had to be a massive amount of explosive, and it just so happens that nanothermite fits the bill. It's the most explosive substance known to man. It's more explosive than dynamite. It has more energy than nitroglycerin. It has more energy than C4. It has more energy than that PET stuff that you hear about. All the other explosives are little wimpy things compared to thermite. That's what people don't understand yet. This is the most explosive, high explosive that you can use. It's never been available to the public. It's only been developed by Lawrence Livermore Laboratories, and they only started to talk about it in 1999. Well, that just happens to be back when this could have been done. In that era, they made a request to New York City for a permit for controlled demolition. It was denied because of the asbestos hazard.
You know, it just seems like they blow it off.
Well, let me finish what I'm saying.
Nobody says nothing about it.
Well, that's what we're trying to do.
Okay for that building to fall down just by itself.
There's no way it could fall down by itself. Those buildings are engineered to not do that, and that building was 20 times. That building was 20 times stronger than the design called for because it was the first of its kind, and they were trying to be very careful. So even if you cut out half of the strength, they say that the steel lost half of its strength by the fires. Even if that's true, it was still 10 times stronger than it needed to be to stand up. So even if it lost 50% of its strength, that would not account for a collapse. So their whole story does not fit the science. It's the science you have to stick with. Pardon me? Say that again? Oh, your TV set's on in the background.
We're all naive or something. Like we're just a bunch of stupid people out here.
Well, nobody's stupid, but everybody's conditioned to accept the idea that our government could not contain people evil enough to perpetrate such a crime against its own countrymen. Well, the fact is that Northwoods is a really good example.
Anything you tell them these days.
You say you aren't?
Just like, and if you say something on TV, tell them long enough, they're going to believe it.
Well, let's put it this: that's how the official story got accepted. They kept repeating it and repeating it. But if you notice, no one anywhere has ever presented any evidence to support the official story. There is no supporting evidence of any kind. However, all of the supporting evidence that there is points to controlled demolition. So that's another thing. You know, what
you just keep doing the same thing you're doing over and over until they get the right thing in their brains.
Well, each time we're getting a little closer to, you know.
Thanks a lot for what you're doing.
Thank you, caller. So it seems like we're not making progress, but the fact of the matter is that almost everywhere people are aware that 9/11, well, the official story just doesn't fit in anybody's mind. There's always something about the story that makes them question. But when they start seeing things, there's different epiphany moments for people. Some people look at Building 7, which is a classic controlled demolition in every sense. It goes exactly like controlled demolition. That's why it's called the smoking gun of 9/11. But the actual bullets of 9/11 is the nanothermite. Go ahead, caller. You're on the air. We got another caller.
Hey, how you doing? My name's Ron.
Hello, Ron.
I just want to congratulate you and people like Alex Anasari that get the real news out there. But I had a couple questions for you. In a long time, I've been listening or watching you guys.
Uh-huh.
I've never heard any of you guys mention the unknown Bush brother, not Jeb Bush, not George
Marvin
Jr., but the one that did the retrofit.
That's Marvin.
On the two towers in '99, up to a couple months before they blew up.
I think he was. That was Marvin Bush, and he was on the board of directors of SecureCom, which was the security company that was in charge of the World Trade Center towers, and remarkably enough, the security company for both American Airlines and United Airlines, the two airlines involved. So that's we did mention that before, and it's.
Yeah, a lot of people don't know that. But you just mentioned the asbestos there. That they wanted over $100 million per building to remove that. What are those? Where did all that asbestos go? I mean, is New York or Manhattan going to turn into a big cancer pot in the next 20 years?
It's doing it right now. That's the tragedy. The people that were involved in the 9/11 cleanup are dying like flies. The dogs that were doing the cleanup have already died from cancer and other things from the asbestos. The asbestos hazard is very, very real, and anybody that was involved can experience, like you said, cancer. Even if you were exposed to asbestos 20 or 30 years ago, it can still develop into cancer and bring you down. And that's the tragedy, that the EPA measured the air quality and declared it safe with asbestos floating in it. That was on George Bush orders. And doesn't that make anybody mad? I mean, that alone, isn't that evidence that our government is sinister enough to do tragic things to its own people? The EPA lied. Now, what more do the folks that say, I don't believe our government could do such a thing? Well, right there's in your face what they did. And, what's the difference between that and taking a building down? 50,000 people are dying right now from the 9/11 asbestos hazard. And again, that was why they didn't get the destruction permit in the the late 90s. And by the way, who's to say the building wasn't already wired when they asked for the permit? And
okay. Speaking along that line right there, I have just a quick question that I've always wanted to pass by you guys.
Go for it.
Now, back when the towers first fell and they were dropped down, I watched them in horror just like everybody else did. But in the back of my mind, I said, wow, they came down just like they were set up to.
Yep.
Now, if a week later, they would have came out saying that back in, I don't know what year it was, but back in the 70s, they said that any building over X amount of floors high in New York, Manhattan, had to be wired for explosives just in case that they had to come down so that they wouldn't disturb any other buildings. I know that this is a law, and that other buildings in Manhattan, if people don't know this, they are set up to explode. They just have to hook them up and push a button. If they would have come along and said that had to initiate this and to bring the buildings down, would everybody still think it's a conspiracy?
Well, you'd have to ask yourself, what emergency would mean you'd have to bring the building down? I can't think of any reason why you have to suddenly collapse a building.
Putting planes into the building, but,
Well, the building, so what? It hurt a few floors of the building, and then the fires basically went out.
Oh, no, I agree with you, but if they would have came out with this, then would people have, agreed with them more compared to...
Well, I have an issue with that. First of all, I've never heard that there was some sort of an order to... I'm sure the architects and engineers for 9/11 Truth would have mentioned that it's outrageous to wire a building with explosives when you're building it, or even shortly thereafter if you don't intend to bring it down immediately. And I would like to see I'd like to see some documentation. That's the type of thing that you hear, and okay, I'm on notice that somebody says that's true. Now it's up to me to go and do the research, find out, is it really true or is it just some rumor? What is the origin? We need to find that. And that's the type of way I approach any of this. I don't just say, meh, the buildings fell down, meh, by controlled demolition, meh. The people that are the sheep are the ones that will not open their own eyes when you point to things. Well, look at this. The explosives from the bottom of the building before anything collapsed. Where's that coming from? There isn't even a